Again, I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. October is actually Cybersecurity Month, and so we figured now would be a good time to do a kind of a little kickoff prep thing here for that. So here we have Lisa with us today to talk about cybersecurity in modern healthcare, safeguarding the digital health, and I will let her take it over.
Okay, let me get the right screen. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Looks good
Okay.
from my side.
All right, let me, 1 second. When it rebooted, all my monitors got messed up. All right, now I got it. There we go. Here we go.
I am going to throw out there for folks too, just to remember we do have the Q&A function enabled. So if you have questions, please utilize that. The chat, I think, is more set up just going to be to us, the presenters. So if there's technical questions or anything like that, by all means, we can put that in there. But do use the Q&A. We will have time at the end of the webinar for those to be addressed.
Okay, are we ready? Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Lisa Bezos, and I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the University of Nebraska Medical Center and Nebraska Medicine. And I'm thrilled to be here to talk to you about this critical conversation involving with cyber threats facing modern healthcare organizations and the steps we must all take to protect the patient data, ensure regulatory compliance, and build a more resilient future. A little bit about myself. I have over 20 years in the healthcare IT space. I began my career in the networking and infrastructure world. I like to tell my team members here that I started before cybersecurity was even a word that we talked about. But as technology evolved and new threats were identified, I quickly actually found myself pivoting into the realm of what would be called cybersecurity. I would do a lot of the firewalls, intrusion prevention, vulnerability management, all of those types of programs. And I was gifted the opportunity to become the first CISO at my organization in 2018. And it's been quite the journey ever since. And I'm very honored to be here to present to you guys and tell you our journey, our story, and how we can work together to ensure that we are protecting the patient data, we're ensuring integrity of our systems, and we are also preventing cyber attacks from happening to us to begin with. Healthcare organizations store various types of sensitive information, including personal health information, medical histories, insurance details, genetic data, let alone the financials of the organization and even our own internal HR records. But without the data, our modern clinical care could not happen. Data enables precision medicine. It targets treatments based upon clinical results and allows for organizations to optimize the healthcare journey for our patients. And data is really, truly the crown jewel of the organization, and it needs to be protected at all costs. We have kind of flipped the narrative here at UNMC and Nebraska Medicine to make sure that we talk about the safety of our patient data as part of the patient experience and as part of our provider and employee experience. If you don't have trust in that data, what kind of care can we give, or what confidence does the patients have that they're getting the care that they deserve here? So cybersecurity is crucial for maintaining integrity of the healthcare services and ensuring patient safety, like I was saying. Digital integrity is in a healthcare system refers to the accuracy, completeness, and consistency of the electronic health data throughout its life cycle. It ensures that patient information is reliable and trustworthy, which is absolutely crucial for effective patient care and regulatory compliance. And I always tell my team that we have been entrusted by our clinicians, our researchers, and our patients to protect that data. It also helps to prevent unauthorized access to medical systems, and it protects the sensitive patient information from breaches. It also, why does integrity matter? It helps to provide, to limit medical errors. And medical errors in the United States are estimated to cost between $17 billion and $29 billion per year. and their direct medical expenses, lost income, and other indirect costs, such as legal settlements. So if we can ensure the integrity of that data, then we can offset a lot of these other downstream effects. So what does the impact of cyber attacks have on hospital operations? Well, if you've never been involved in even if not even a cyber attack, but even a downtime of a weather event or things like that, you'll quickly understand that our situations and our clinical environments today are so heavily reliant upon our technology to be working. So when you have a cyber attack, it can severely disrupt the hospital operations, which includes leading to delays in treatments, errors in medical procedures, etc. And ransomware attacks, in particular, they can actually go and encrypt your critical data, which forces hospitals to divert cases and also to delay procedures. Robust healthcare operations have an extensive business continuity and disaster recovery plan. However, these plans are usually very limited to a system being down and only for a specific period of time. Most hospitals, actually, I would err to say all hospitals, do not have a disaster recovery and business continuity plan to allow for weeks of inaccessibility. And so what do we do for that? How can no hospital operations unit can plan for these extended downtimes? They just aren't thinking that way, and frankly, we pray that never really happens. But in 2024, the average downtime was 16 days due to a ransomware attack. And the average loss of revenue for this was about $900,000 per day of downtime. But again, like I said, there's a lot of indirect costs there too. Patients going elsewhere for care, reputation damage, legal fees, kind of all the what I call the soft stuff on the backside. And just for clarity's sake too, in 2024, the average cost of a healthcare data breach was approximately $9.7 million. We remain the sector for the most expensive industry for data breaches. And it's not just about getting our data back. It's about also the ability to recover all of those systems and to get the actual operations of treating patients and putting them through the system back online. It's a very arduous process. Okay, so what are the current landscape today, and what are the risks and obstacles that must be considered so that we can work towards preventing and building resilience so we don't have to actually have the 16 days of downtime? As healthcare continues to digitize, cybersecurity will always continue to play a crucial role in ensuring that the safe implementation of technology, that there's safe implementation of all technological advancements inside EHRs, telemedicine, remote patient monitoring, without compromising patient data. Healthcare IT is one of the fastest growing segments of technology, and with the ability for disparate systems to interconnect to create a seamless experience is absolutely necessary. So as we onboard more technologies, you'll see that technologies become smarter, and they become more integrated, and they become more reliant upon not only their brains that run their system, but on each other to give us the whole picture of the patient experience. So how did we get here? Well, years ago, larger organizations tried to create their own systems as early as the 1960s. The Mayo Clinic was a pioneer in this. But it wasn't until the federal government passed the Meaningful Use Program in 2009 that the High-Tech Act that really encouraged the adoptions of EHRs. With that became this surge. And so this also spawned then the digital transformation inside of healthcare. Healthcare records itself became digitized. They became drastically more improved of managing all of the patient information. But then we also started then becoming more interconnected and having more and more systems, devices, et cetera, connecting into the medical record. It's no longer just a database where the caregivers would put in touch points. We can see things continuously now going in and out of our electronic medical record. I like to talk about biomedical devices just because I think it's a very interesting evolution of how one little piece of our ecosystem has grown. Over the past 10 years, the biomedical device market has just grown substantially due to mainly the technology advancements that we were having, and rising health awareness of our population of users. I have an Apple Watch. It tells me all sorts of things about my heart rate, my sleep. Now the new one that's coming out in a couple of weeks has way more EKG features and all sorts of things that are going to be able to go directly into the health app on your phone, which will directly feed into the EMR if your organization allows it. And all of these have regulatory changes has shaped the market, which has increased investment in research and development of these devices to ensure that the delivery of cutting edge solutions will improve patient care. This diagram just shows the explosive growth of biomedical devices and how it's predicted to grow in the upcoming years. I know from our organizational standpoint, we started on a biomedical cybersecurity journey probably I'd say about 7 or 8 years ago. And at that time, we thought when we did our inventory, that we had about maybe 500 connected medical devices inside of our hospital systems. Now we are well over 10,000. And we also have a lot more insight now into knowing that what we really actually have for our inventory. And so, because if you think about the patient room, it is now not just the computer in the room and some monitors. We have pumps that are biodirectionally sending off information to the mothership and getting their recipes sent back down to us. We have patient monitors that are bidirectional. We are now putting in cameras that have intelligence in them so they can try to help us detect falls. There is just an increasing amount of things that are going into every single patient room. And all of these things encompass our healthcare IT space. And with this explosion of devices, quality of care has also definitely increased. The speed to detection of medical issues has increased. But all of this comes with new risks. All of these devices that were once standalone systems, they are now a computing device. However, the skill set to maintain the diagnostic capabilities of the system are not the same as that to limit the vulnerabilities and keep them digitally safe. So we've had to actually, at our organization, merge what we would consider biomedical engineering teams and cybersecurity teams together. We actually have a team right now, it's about 4 or 5 people, that this is their sole job, is to ensure that our medical device systems and these other, I call them fringe IoT devices, are all safe and secure inside of the healthcare ecosystem. The Omnibus Act of 2022 really emphasized the importance of maintaining medical devices to ensure the patient safety. Prior to this, if you had any exposure to medical device companies, they would always tell us, can't touch it, can't update it, FDA won't allow us to. Well, this act required healthcare organizations to adhere to strict guidelines for patching these vulnerabilities. So they can no longer say that anymore. It prioritizes updates. By prioritizing these updates, healthcare providers can protect the sensitive data and enhance the overall security of medical devices used in clinical settings. And I know from our journey, we have started a very, very, very intense biomedical device security journey about 3 years ago, where we put boots on the ground. We were going system by system by system, getting all of our items patched and all of our stuff going, that we've actually have seen a decrease in the amount of, I say, service tickets that our biomedical team is having to actually go out and do. Because why? Well, just as I could not ignore my BIOS update on my computer today, by ensuring that our systems are updated to the latest versions, the latest firmware, the latest operating systems, et cetera, that all increases the safety of that system. And also medical devices that reach their end of life cycle, they no longer can get those critical software patches, which exposes them to vulnerabilities. So unpatched devices are actually what cyber criminals are looking for. They want to they want to find their hooks into our systems so they can then find these old systems. So we have really really flipped the narrative here at Nebraska Medicine about making sure that our fleet is life cycle replaced. Now, it was a big commitment from the organization because it is very expensive to make sure it's always up to date. However, again, like I'm telling you, we are able to advance other things such as the systems integrations, the quality of the images, the real-time monitoring. All of these things we're able to expand upon because we are upgrading our fleet to the latest versions. But it is a financial burden to replace all the outdated technology. And it often prevents healthcare delivery organizations from upgrading. But that leads to serious risks in patient safety and clinical operations if these systems were to be taken down by cyber criminals or just frankly get so old that they just don't work anymore. So it's a balancing act, and you really need to really frame it in the safety and risk category for your organization. Okay, so all new systems that we bring into this organization bring new threats to the safety and integrity of the entire healthcare system. Again, the different types of attacks we have ransomware attacks, which is a type of malicious software or malware that prevents you from accessing your computer files, systems, or network, and demands that you pay a ransom for their return. Ransomware attacks can cause costly disruptions to operations and the loss of critical information and data. And the problem is that you can unknowingly download ransomware onto a computer just by opening an email attachment, clicking on an ad, following a link, or even visiting a website that is embedded with malware. And it's really transparent to the users. Most users don't even know that they're doing it. But once the code is loaded onto a computer, it'll lock access to the computer itself and then start encrypting files that are stored on there or reaching out to other things that it has access to. Most of the time, you don't even know that your computer's been infected. And you usually don't discover it when you can no longer access your data or your computer starts acting in ways that it's not supposed to. But these attacks can disrupt operations, they can delay patient care, and they can cause serious financial loss. How do they get in? Like I said before, usually, honestly, phishing attacks remain the top threat vector for healthcare organizations. We are bombarded every single day with millions and millions and millions of emails. The last stat I had from my team was that we received about 85 million emails into our organization in 1 month. With that, we blocked at least 85 to 88% of those from even getting into the inbox. Then once it gets into the inbox, we still have controls and tools and stuff that go on it to try to make sure that everything is safe. But the point is that's a lot of arrows being thrown at your organization and shot over the walls at you every day. And but these phishing attacks, they can cause havoc in many ways. They can send you a link that makes you think that you want to get this file or that you need to log into the system. And all those are doing is trying to harvest your user IDs and passwords. And then that fake system then turns around and tries to attempt to log in as you. Multi-factor authentication is the mitigating control for this, but it's not foolproof. And then also phishing attacks can be an injection point for malicious software. In 2020, my organization fell victim to this. We had a user working remotely because of the pandemic. She opened her personal email, saw an invoice attachment for some lawn care. She opened it, realized it wasn't something she was expecting, and she closed the file. She did not do anything other than open and look at it. In a short amount of time, that PDF that she opened actually had malicious software, a malicious payload on it, and it downloaded onto her workstation, and it started its process from there. That one email, one user at one time, then turned around to being one of the most disastrous events that we've ever had. But there are many other threats to healthcare IT, and so I'm going to go through a few of the top ones with you, just so you're aware. As healthcare organizations are increasingly adopting cloud services, misconfiguration of the cloud services can expose sensitive data. Improperly configured cloud storage can lead to data breaches and unauthorized access. Many people had a speed to adopting, just say, Microsoft 365. Most people use Outlook as their email. Anyway, Microsoft 365 is a beast. There is a lot of security tools, security features, security things that if you don't have the right people making sure that that is always configured appropriately, it can lead to disastrous breaches. Healthcare providers also use web applications for patient portals and telemedicine. These applications have vulnerabilities that attackers like to exploit and access sensitive data. They are constantly scanning your externally facing access for a regular patient to see what's going on and what they can get to from there. If you don't have telemetry and monitoring on your edge and your externally facing, I highly recommend that you either subscribe to a service that can help you, or you insource and get the tools that you need so you can see what's going on, because you'll be shocked. But that's from the outside. From the inside, though, insider threats in healthcare systems involve employees or contractors misusing their access. Some of these can be intentional, such as they want to steal the research data, or they want to steal this data for their own use, or they can be accidental, like exposing sensitive information accidentally by, like I said, in the Microsoft bubble, if you do not have your sharing set up to where it's contained, you can accidentally publicly share any piece of information that you have out there. But both types of these threats can compromise patient privacy and lead to legal and financial consequences. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, the OCR does not care. They treat it as a breach. So healthcare organizations often depend on third-party vendors also for various services. However, if some of these vendors have their own weak security practices, they can become vulnerable to cyber attacks as well. And this is actually one of the hardest risks to mitigate because it's so widespread and involves so many external companies. The average healthcare system relies on thousands of third parties. And many of these third parties have ways that they say that they need you to have this tool or this program running on their system so that they can come in to help you maintain it. Well, every single one of those listeners out there is an unprotected whole. If that company gets compromised, they can come right on into your organization. We actually have a policy where we don't allow those in our environment. If they need, it can be installed but not turned on. And if we need third-party remote access, and that is the only way that vendor can support us, which, believe me, I have numerous conversations with these vendors about how this is ridiculous. But if we need them, we turn it on for just that period of time, and we observe them the whole time. We cannot have unchecked ingress points into our organization. That just bypasses all of our security controls. And then what do you do for the people and the providers that need to bring their own device to us? Well, we have a very strict policy that you can bring your own device and you can use it to access the company resources if you install our mobile device management on there so we can control everything. And then even that sends you to what we call an employee or faculty, staff, students section of our guest network. We know who you are, you're allowed to get on there, but that system cannot get to anything internally natively. It can only get to things that we present through our mobile device management. By doing that, we were able to take what is our internally controlled resources and make sure that they are protected in a very segmented bubble, and then have all this other stuff, the fringe on the outside, that's in yet another protected bubble, but it cannot access the patient data directly. But your ability to properly manage and secure people's personal devices is very limited. You have to have employees that trust you. We have very a sophisticated system that we can actually show you that we cannot see into your personal device at all. as I explained to everybody on a monthly basis when we do our new provider orientation stuff, is that we create basically a moat on their personal device. That moat then logs into the applications that are licensed and authorized for our use with their enterprise credentials, not their Apple ID, not their Google Play Store ID. So they actually can download them from our own little internal app store inside this bubble. And then when they leave the organization, that bubble goes away and it doesn't affect anything around them. I understand that not all organizations can have that sophisticated of a system, but it was the way that we could build trust with our workforce, that we're not looking at their photos, we're not looking at who they're communicating with on Facebook or their text messages, anything like that. We cannot actually see it. One of the other things that is one of the biggest risks, and this goes back to not only biomedical devices, but just other systems in general, is we are continuing to have to use outdated systems, and those outdated systems lack modern security features. So just as you'll get to a point where if you have, like I had to get a new iPad 3 years ago because my iPad could not handle another iOS update anymore. And then it would start that some of your applications just wouldn't be able to run on it. Okay, the same mentality has to happen inside of our healthcare organizations. We need to work with our hospital operations team so that they understand the risk that they are putting themselves at by using outdated systems. We have really had a tremendous support, I would say, from our chief operating officer and even our CEO of the healthcare organization to really understand this, that by not updating systems, and this doesn't mean systems in patient rooms, this can even mean network switches that all of this stuff connects to, access points that your wireless connects to. The longer you wait to make sure that the more you let those go end of life and end of support, you are just exposing yourselves to more security breaches and actually truly bigger outages, because outdated things die, electronics die after so long, and those will die. And then what are you going to do? Because some of those things, especially like network equipment, for instance, cannot just be procured overnight. You have to plan for it, and you have to have people that can configure it, and you have to replace it. It's a whole process. So do not, whatever you can do, get in front of your administration to explain to them why we should not be running on legacy systems. Oops, I skipped a page. So now we're going to talk about some challenges that are in healthcare IT, and then what we can do from it from a cybersecurity perspective. So again, the challenges are that cyber attacks, they result in downtime, penalties, damage to reputation. And so cybersecurity itself needs to be elevated at your organization in the sense of patient safety. And that's what we've done at our organization. We actually have a daily, they call it the daily shout out, where we have representatives from every single facet of the hospital operations area talking about how many falls we've had today, how many various safety events, and whether or not they just in general are green, yellow, red for being able to actually perform hospital operations. IT and cybersecurity report out every single day at the same shout out. We actually say, how many days has it been since the last severity 1 outage from a infrastructure type systems perspective? That shows how safe we are. Then we also talk about, from a cybersecurity perspective, how many days has it been since we've had a user who was compromised, AKA gave out their credentials to a bad actor. And then also, how many days has it been since we've had a device or a system compromised? Now, I can say we have put in major systems to help us keep that number safe, but it wasn't always that way. We were having a major issue with users falling victim to credentialing attacks, where they would give out their username and password, and then we would have people coming in and trying to get to them. But we had multi-factor authentication, so we were able to stop it, but they still gave it out. And so we still reset that number to 0. By bringing it to the enterprise level of these numbers and these our safety, it really brought it up to a different level to where everybody was aware of it. We did not want to be looked at as a barrier anymore. We wanted to be looked at as a strategic asset to increase the safety of our organization. And if you aren't at that level yet, I would be happy to have the conversations with you about how we really took ourselves into the digital safety world, versus just being a cost center and the office of no and all of that. We are the digital safety office. And as we described earlier, healthcare systems are just very complex, and they keep increasing in complexity every day with every new system, every new workflow, everything that comes in. We are just becoming more and more complex. And if your IT leadership is not abreast to recognize and appreciate the complexity that's coming, there's going to be things that are missed. And it'll put challenges in front of you. And the integrating of these various technologies and dealing with the outdated software or outdated processes is just going to get your systems into trouble. And regulatory issues like HIPAA compliance also pose difficulties when trying to maintain efficiencies. We need to make sure that they're all working together, from regulatory to technology to cybersecurity to the actual workflows of your healthcare organization. As you know, healthcare organizations, they must comply with regulations such as HIPAA. And this mandates that we actually do protect the patient data. But if you don't really understand the complexities of the systems, how can you really protect the data that the systems are producing? So that's why it's so important to keep putting cybersecurity and technology advancements in front of people to understand that that's crucial for protecting patient safety. The new HIPAA security rule propositions that are coming out, I don't know if you're aware of this, but they put them out for comment earlier this calendar year. I think they closed comments in March, and we're waiting for the final ruling of it. I'm not sure when those are going to be, but they're really changing the tone for what was in the former HIPAA security rule. The former rule talked about a lot of addressable things and that you should do things. This is flipping the narrative to becoming required. It's no longer going to be if you can or to your best ability. You're going to be required to have multi-factor authentication. You're going to be required to have every single one of your policies reference what in the security rule it is doing. And then you're required to have a technology asset inventory and map. This is probably one of, I think, the most burdensome tasks and low-hanging fruit, but gives you actually the biggest bang for your buck. If you do not have a database or a way to have inventory to understand what you have, where it's at, and what it's doing, there is no way you're going to be able to have a business continuity and disaster recovery plan, like we talked about at the beginning of this, because you don't understand the impacts, right? You don't understand who in the organization is using this system. And is this system and those devices that are being used to it absolutely 100% critical? Or is it a nice to have? And if it's a nice to have, we need to put that on the should care about it list, but not on the business continuity and disaster recovery emphasis. And then also another thing that the new HIPAA security rule is going to come out with is that they're going to specify you must be compliant by X. Now, there was a lot of comments and a lot of feedback on this, but it's really a lot of organizations prior to this kept kind of kicking the can down the road, and this is going to stop that. This is going to say, no, you absolutely have to. So if your organization is not ready for this, again, we would be happy to have the conversations of helping you map out how you're going to get there. Not that I'm saying a plan is going to give you a get out of jail free card, but not having a plan will absolutely hurt you. You need to be starting to think about how are you going to be completely compliant with everything that they're saying. Even if you can't get to it this calendar year, at least you have a plan to say, we're going to start here with this Lego, and we're going to add on to it, we're going to add on to it, and we're going to add on to it, so that you at least have a plan. and you can provide that to your board or to your administrators to have them understand what you're saying from your lens. Failure to comply, they are already saying they're going to impose steep and heavy fines. And to be clear, your cyber liability insurance would not cover this. They expect you to do all of these things as well. And then also, you need to also phrase it to your leadership that if we don't do this, we are going to get fined from the OCR. And if we have a breach, we'll be fined even more. So it really comes down to, do you want to pay now or do you want to pay later? And some institutions are actually shutting down their doors because they don't have the money to do either one of these. So we want to help you prepare yourself so that doesn't happen at your organization and it doesn't happen because of an IT or an information security reason. So how do we mitigate these things? So the main thing we can do is have governance. Governance is the key to creating the culture of cybersecurity. It starts with organizational policies and procedures that clearly articulate the why. Which HIPAA or National Institutes of Technology regulation or requirement does this policy enforce? And then how do you train all your staff to understand and respect this? I actually showed this slide to the University of Nebraska Board of Regents and to the Nebraska Medicine Board of Directors and Chiefs last year when we were having this conversation about the 5 stages of cyber maturity. Leadership must be aligned to all of these goals that we're talking about from the top down. Because if they are not aligned to it, it's going to be fragmented and it's not going to be pervasive. And we're going to have, I guess, no bang for our buck, if you really think about it that way. So the different stages are, stage 1 is unaware. The organization really doesn't care about cybersecurity and sees it as irrelevant. Stage 2 is fragmented, where the organization sees cyber risk as a potential risk, but it's never going to happen to us, so we don't really need to worry about it. Stage 3 is where your top leaders set the tone. They know it's going to happen. They know it matters, but it's not a priority from a budgeting perspective, a resource perspective, and they just don't really talk about it. But stage 4 is where it's pervasive. The organization leadership takes full ownership of the cybersecurity risk management. They have endorsed the policies, they have frameworks, and they've defined the people that are going to be doing this work. And then stage 5 is networked, where organizations are highly connected with their peers, their partners, and they integrate cyber risk as part of their everyday to day operations. And all people show exceptional cybersecurity awareness. I can tell you that I feel, when I showed this to the organization a couple years ago, I was not feeling as optimistic at my own place as I do today. I do believe that we are starting to become a stage 4 to a stage 5 organization here, but that has taken a lot of people and relationship work and actually having tools and whatnot aligned. One of the things that we did a year and a half ago was I was in a conversation with the CEO and the COO, and they said, we really haven't had a full-scale exercise since the event in 2020. Can you get together a full-blown exercise with all of basically the CEO and all of the chiefs and all of their direct reports? So we're talking VPs and above, and we took a 4-hour chunk of their day, and it was mandatory that they come. And one of the things I did in this room, and I knew most of the people in this room, and I had them raise their hand. I said, who was here in 2020 when we had the incident? Almost probably 80% of the people raised their hand. Then I said, who is doing the exact same job that you were doing in 2020 that you're doing today? And only 2 people had their hand up, our CEO and our CFO. Otherwise, every single person in this room, and there was probably 60 people in this room, are doing a completely different job. So as I told them, What you did then, you will not do now. So we need to go back through and think about it from your new lens, your new role, and what you know to have been a pain point then. How can we make sure whoever has your position today understands those pain points and is working towards it? So that spawned an entire business continuity program that inside of the organization where I partnered with our emergency preparedness team, and we went business unit, all acute care, all perioperative, all ambulatory, all back office. And we walked through what is a business continuity plan? How do you document what is critical? What is nice to have? We call them gold, silver, bronze. How do you start to categorize what is your minimal viable product that you need? And then how do we make sure that your workers and your teams understand that? And then what do you need from a technology perspective to help make sure that we maintain those plans, we exercise those plans and whatnot? So we're actually going back to the network switch replacement conversation. We are actually replacing an entire, well, not entirely in our hospital, but about 50 of our major switches on each of our floors in many of our areas. And so we're actually incorporating, they have a scheduled downtime where they're going to know they're going to be down, or a part of their system will be down for this allocated hours. We've worked with the business continuity teams and we are actually testing those plans. So it's a program that we are doing in conjunction with other known work. And it is actually working really, really, really well. But how does this all roll into risk? Well, you have to have a robust risk management program. And if you don't have a robust risk management program at your organization to inject cybersecurity risk into the overall risk management program of your organization, it's going to be, again, fragmented, and people are not going to really understand why it's important to them. So we use NIST as a basis for everything we do, which is the National Institutes of Standard and Technology. And they have a risk management framework process. And really, truly, this goes back to some of the things that we are actually talking about with the new HIPAA security rule. Like, one, you have to be able to categorize all your information systems and base it upon impact. Well, if you don't have an inventory of all of your systems, you can't actually categorize which ones are important, and then you can't cascade that down into the business units to find out that, you know what, it's okay that we don't have access to our time tracking system because we have enabled business continuity in all of our clocks on each floor that actually store it and have enough memory to store punches for up to 7 days or something like that. Like, there's things like that that you have to be able to go down to that level. If you don't have an inventory, you're never going to get there. Then, based upon this inventory of systems, there are certain controls that need to be on certain systems based upon just the classification of what they're doing. Again, if there is a downtime procedure and it's a nice to have, I'm not going to spend the time or energy to really make sure that those security controls are at the topmost if we can just shut the system down and worry about it in a couple of weeks when we bring the rest of the systems back up. So that's part of how we implement very selected security controls very effectively. Then you need to always be assessing your controls. Are they still, you turned this on a year ago. Is it still effective, or has an update come out that has changed the way you need to do something? Those continual security assessments of your own systems is critical and is going to be required in the new HIPAA security rule. And then how do you authorize that a new system can even come into your organization? Do you have an intake process for this? Do you ensure that everything is being cataloged from the minute it gets into the organization? And then how do we make sure that we exit it out appropriately from the systems? And then again, like I said, the continuous monitoring of all of these things. And then how do you audit all of this all the time? That is all part of the risk management framework process. And all of that needs to feed into your overarching enterprise risk management. Annual HIPAA risk assessments are required and necessary for you to also be able to tell the story of this system and what we need to do to the system, or why we need to upgrade the system, or what we need to do to make sure that we are in compliance. Not being in compliance with HIPAA is not allowed by the OCR. And when I say it's not allowed, it's not an excuse. So if you say, we knew the system was outdated, leadership doesn't want to upgrade it right now, there's nothing we can do, I'm sorry, that's not a corrective action plan. That's not a plan that tells us how we are going to mitigate this risk. But if you have if you know that you can't afford to upgrade a system today, but we are going to plan for it in 2 years, and we have a plan for it, and we're also going to be making sure that we monitor access controls and ensuring putting other controls around it. All of that is a corrective action plan. That is a get out of jail free card. But just saying, yeah, we accept the risk isn't gonna cut it when the OCR comes in. And I can tell you from my own personal experience with the OCR and with our incident in 2020, we got called. So we had the incident in September of 2020. We got the notice in August of 21 that we needed to provide the full-blown who, what, when, where, why, and how report. Between the Information Security Office, the Privacy Office, and the Legal Office, we compiled together the narrative, the story, and what we did for each thing that helped to cause the incident. We had to have corrective action plans and evidence that we were bridging those gaps. Our document that we had to produce to the OCR was over 1,500 pages long. It is not something that anybody wants to go through. And it was, I call it my doctoral thesis when I don't have a PhD. But that's how serious they take this. And they want us to know every single thing that happened and everything you're doing to stop it from ever happening again. And what we do these annually in our organization. We actually have a third party that helps us, so that it's an agnostic organization that comes in every year and helps us. But we use these risk assessments and means to continue to build the foundation for the digitally safe environment. And we continuously turn the gears to keep our systems and data protected. Like I said, just because it was protected this year doesn't mean that there hasn't become a new vulnerability that came out that was exposed that we need to tweak something. Or, as I tell my team all the time, we are not married to any technology or any solution. We will choose and implement, to the best of our ability, the best solution that we can not only afford, but that we can maintain and manage at that time. If that system, as we know, many technology companies get bought, sold, etc., might not be the best solution in 3 to 4 or 5 years. That's okay. We reserve the right to go and decide that that solution is not the best for us anymore. It hasn't been, kept up. We're going to switch to this one. We just did a complete and total flip of a lot of our baseline endpoint detection and response, our logging system, our email security systems. We did a big, huge rip and replace of a lot of our core systems this year, just exactly for that reason. They just were not meeting our needs anymore. And I was able to explain the why to the organization as to why we were spending this money on these systems, because of our annual HIPAA risk assessments. And we involved the CEO, the COO, the chief legal, and all the VPs and all the business unit lines in our HIPAA risk assessment conversations every year. Okay, so where do you start? Oh, it's a lot of information, and I know I was talking very fast, but where should you start? If I'm advising an organization on how to getting a handle on their cybersecurity program, this is where I tell them to start. You protect the identities. You figure out a way to know every single person that you have in your organization and why they're there and how long they'll be there. Then you look at protecting the devices that they use. What type of endpoint detection and response systems do you have on those systems? Can it protect them inside the organization? And if that laptop goes, say, on a trip somewhere with somebody, then you need to start building a fortress around your key systems and your key data. Then you go in and you encrypt and protect all the data. If you do it in this order of operations, you will have a pretty good handle on who is accessing your systems, with what system, and what data are they getting. Okay, so those measures are going to start to help you get this program going and get it ready for the new HIPAA security rule. But what about tomorrow? This is a quick snapshot of all of the things that industry leaders are advising CISOs to have on their radar. If you don't know what some of these things are, we're happy to have further conversations, or I'm happy to do webinars on and break down each one of these issues. But really, they can actually be a webinar each on their own. But quantum computing is a big one, because just as we are starting to be able to do quantum computing in some of our systems and a lot of our, say, like our genetics, analytics, and stuff like that, so are bad actors. And they can do things faster and more sophisticated. And the algorithms that we do to protect our system have to be tweaked to be quantum proof, if you want to call it that. Cybersecurity skills. We are probably the only industry that I know of that continuously has a 0% unemployment rate. If you actually know what you're doing, you will get hired. And I can encourage all young people to continue to try to become more and more and more resilient here, but with their own skills and becoming more cybersecurity aware. Artificial intelligence and machine learning is a huge, huge opportunity for us to work smarter, not harder, but it also provides, it opens us up to enormous risks. Zero trust, again, who you are, on what device, accessing what data, and only those things that you have in your recipe book can actually access things in zero trust. Cloud, we have more and more things are going into the cloud. We have got to figure out how to get our fortresses not just around inside of our systems, but in the cloud as well. And then how do we do XDR, which is extended detection and response, which means we're not just looking at the system. We're not just looking at the servers. We're just not looking at the workstations. We're looking at everything around the organization and meshing it all together to really understand who is getting to what, when, where, and how, and why. And then that goes into the mesh. We have cloud, we have on-premise, we have remote work. We have all sorts of ways that people can use and access our resources, including your patient wearables. How are we making sure that all of that data is safe, secure, and only getting to be able to have the access that it can? And then privacy, really, truly privacy enhancing computation. How can we put more and more tools on to make sure that the who, what, when, where, why, and how is actually happening, and somebody's not inadvertently looking at things they shouldn't be looking at? And then going back into the IoT security, like I said, we're putting more and more things in the patient rooms. We're putting more and more things on the patient bodies. We are putting more things at people's homes that we need to be able to know that we can monitor them at home with these devices. So you don't have to be in the hospital, but we need those devices to communicate securely. And then the vendor supply chain issue that we talked about is huge and will continue to be huge. And as more and more vendors realize how explosive the healthcare IT world is, we're going to have more and more supply chain issues. Okay, again, cybersecurity in healthcare is crucial for protecting sensitive data, ensuring patient safety, complying with regulations, and mitigating financial impact, maintaining trust and reputation, and supporting innovation and efficiency. Modern healthcare organizations must recognize the risks of the organization and work towards remediation. Not mitigating is not acceptable and will undoubtedly result in a major event causing an outage, or worse, even a data breach. And like I said, the Office of Civil Rights, the OCR, they're the enforcers of HIPAA privacy and security rule, and they will fine organizations for noncompliance and ignoring known risks. Maintaining strong cybersecurity measures is crucial for building trust with patients and stakeholders. A breach can damage the reputation of the providers and the institution and affect your ability to deliver high quality care. And I want to stress the importance of staying vigilant and taking proactive measures. Continuous improvement is the key to success. Never, ever assume that you are done. I tell the team all the time that we have a cybersecurity program. That program has several programs within it, and programs never end. Projects have a start and end date, but programs never end. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground today, and again, I apologize for being late for my firmware update. But from the evolving cyber threat landscape, regulatory challenges, securing digital transformation, and preparing for the future of healthcare security, the one key takeaway from this discussion is that cybersecurity in healthcare isn't just about compliance. It's about trust, patient safety, and resilience. And as our technology advances and threats become more and more sophisticated, it is critical that we continue to prioritize this, to be proactive in risk management and collaborate across the industry and elevate this to the attention of our leaders in our organization. All right, is there any questions?
Okay, that was
Yep.
cybersecurity ones are always just like a fire hose, but it's a good fire hose. It is the top of the hour, so if people have to drop off, I would totally understand that. And want to remind folks, I put it in the chat that all of this has been recorded, and in the next 2 or 3 business days, we'll have it posted to our website as well as our YouTube channel. There was 2 questions that came through from looks like from Dee Dee.
Okay.
One asked, does Biomed take care of your firmware updates of your, I'm going to say that's medical Internet of Things devices or your IT department?
So that's that new team that we created. We call it the Biomed Cybersecurity Team. So it's kind of a little bit of a hybrid. They were former biomedical engineers that we have trained up. They all are certified in cybersecurity. They all have they have a great foundation. They're actually some of the smartest people that I know. I'm impressed with them every day. But they actually go out and do the updates, not the biomed team. The biomed team, they did not, the reason that we got to the state we were in was because they did not feel comfortable doing it. And so we knew that there was no way we were going to transform a whole team. So we created our own team. And then do we have a third party assessment of our cloud environment? Yes, we have had many, and we continuously do them on a continual basis. And we are actually getting ready to contract with a third party, and they can give you my contact information and we can talk offline about why we use the Microsoft internal tools, but I can also say that I'm in the best shape of my life, and we all know I'm not, right? So sometimes we need an external assessor. And so we're actually going to be using a third-party assessor to evaluate our current state and where we need to go, so that our M365 team is more on the technical systems team. And again, just kind of like the biomed issue, they don't really have a cybersecurity lens. And so we're trying to infiltrate into that now and make sure that they understand the changes and stuff that they have to do.
Hopefully that helped, Dee Dee, and I'll make sure to get you connected with Lisa here offline. Everything, we can take care of that. One of the things I guess that struck me as I was listening to everything, and you were talking about the journey of Nebraska Med, which I'm hoping is somewhat the journey that other places are, is I feel like for those of you who are still on and who are more of our emergency management kind of folks, cybersecurity to me is one of those, is a gray rhino. Um, for those of you who aren't familiar with that term or who've never read the book, I highly recommend it. But the whole idea is it's a threat that's known, that's out there, and you can either choose to do something about it before it becomes a problem, or you can ignore it till the last minute, or you can get hit head on by it. And I think cybersecurity is one of those where we've seen all of that happen to people, to organizations. They've maybe they saw the threat 10 years ago and haven't done anything, whether it's because of pick your reasons, right? Um, but I think the ship is definitely turning from it, rather than it being a gray rhino of, hey, that might happen, I can worry about it later, to more of an immediate threat. It's just a matter of time before it does happen. And webinars like this and everything really help to make that shift of, cyber attacks going to become as regular as a tornado or a hurricane. In a lot of ways, they already are.
Yeah, and I also say too, if you need help crafting the narrative or telling the story to your leadership so that your leadership can, I'd say, get on the same page as our leadership here, I am also happy to give you that playbook of how you do those things because it really begins with people and relationships, and they have to trust what you're saying. And it has to go vice versa. They have to trust you and you have to trust them. And if that trust isn't there, then I don't know how you're going to be able to protect your organization.
Right. I don't see any other questions anywhere, so I want to thank everybody for joining us. I absolutely want to thank Lisa for all of that information. Like I mentioned, the recording will be put out in another couple of days, and we appreciate everybody coming by and listening, and hopefully getting more prepared as we head into Cybersecurity Awareness Month here next month.
Thank you all.